Hi everyone, today I'm talking about Expedition to Newdale by Lookout Games and by designer Alexander Pfister. This is a 1 to 4 player, I suppose, resource management game that was released in 2019. Now the game was or is based on one of Alexander Pfister's famous small card games called Oh My Goods. Now I will say I've never played Oh My Goods, so I can't compare the two, and I know a lot of people will be doing that. So I suppose in a good way I can look at this game in its own respect really and not have that in the back of my mind. So I'm going to be very careful with this one because it is I suppose a campaign driven game. There are 8 different scenarios which kind of mess with the rules and add different things into the game. But I wanted to do this just to show how the game plays and its core mechanisms and so on without giving anything away. So I'm going to be quite wary of that. So again, very, very basic mechanical overview here. So you're going to get given a lot of game boards with this game. I think there's 4 different types and they're all double-sided. This one is the basic one. You've also got this other board here which shows your score track and some different abilities you've got here. And you've got your own little player board. Your player board looks like this, and it talks through all the different phases in the game and offers you different spots to put buildings. You're going to start with a coal mine. I have a couple of these different little things here you can unlock. And you're going to start with a bunch of cards, because this is very much a card-driven game. You've got this huge stack of buildings that you can play through. You've got loads of other buildings that are going to be unlocked as the story goes on. These just depict your different resources. And each one is going to have a kind of scenario, or each mission that is going to have a scenario, and it's going to have an events deck. Now the scenarios start off very simple, but they do, as I mentioned, become quite more involved and more mechanisms come into the fold and so on. So again, take this as a very introductory version of the game. At the start of the game, you're going to get given 8 cards, and you're going to have to choose to shed these down to 5 cards to form your starting hand. So again, this is the starting mission, so I'm not going to give anything away here. The objective here is to collect food to accumulate up to 30 coins. So you've got your corn, you've got your bread, and you've got your meat. And I should say very clearly, this is the solo mode of the game. The multiplayer versions have slightly different criteria. So yeah, in this solo version, I've got to have 30 coins worth of these goods. I've got to have 38 points, and I've got to have 2 military strength. You've got this events deck here, which is going to reveal itself as the game goes on and kind of add new buildings into the picture and so on. And as I said, you've got this massive stack of building cards. So considering the objective of the game here, let's say I can get rid of a couple here which won't really do me much good. So let's say I get rid of this one, and this one. I'm not going to think about this too much. Start going to the discard pile, and let's talk about how the game actually plays out. So first off, you're going to draw an event from the events deck. So what I'd do is from the stack here, I'd reveal the event, and this is going to show some important information. So for example here, it will say put this building into the display, which is the number 200 building, and it will say when I can build, I can choose to build from that display other than just my hand. And you've got a bit of flavor text here as well. And these different symbols on the side of the cards here are going to be quite important because that's going to play a big factor on what I can and can't produce during the turn. So after you've revealed the event, you are going to, I suppose it's worker placement, pretty clearly worker placement. You're going to start with 2 of these tokens and you're going to deploy them onto different spots. And you can either deploy them onto spots onto your board here where you've got buildings, or you can use these I suppose common places that are on the main board here. So the building spaces are quite interesting, and I suppose I should show the anatomy of these cards. So this just shows it's a starting building. Some of the other ones will have costs on, for example, which costs to build it. So for example, this one would cost 10 to build, and points that you're going to get at the end of the game, and also what the goods produce. So what this coal mine says is that I need 2 yellow workers, I need 1 of these red workers in order to produce a coal, and that coal is going to be worth 1 coin. And something I should have done during setup is that you start with a number of goods already on your building like such. So what this is showing is that I've got 5 coal because they're on the coal mine card, and each one of these cubes is going to be worth a coin. So when you choose to allocate onto these buildings, you can either put your little token on any of these spots. And what this means is that I believe if I put it on this spot here, it means that I'm going to have one of these workers fewer than the criteria depicted on the card. So you've got your 4 different types of workers. You've got your yellow ones, your green ones, your red ones, and your blue ones. And you will have different rarities. So you can see the yellow ones are more popular, with 6 being available in this bag here. And you've got your rarer ones here, which have the blue ones where there's only 3. So in order for me to trigger this, I'm going to need 2 yellows and a red. And the odds on that are pretty good, considering this card has already got a kind of a starting point. So I've already got 1 yellow into the picture, and I've also got 2 reds. So I actually only need 1 more yellow to get the standard ability. And you know, the yellows being more common, the chances are that's going to be drawn from the bag. So let's say, for example, I put it on here like this. So what this symbol says means that I'm going to, I believe that I'm going to have 1 more of the depicted workers than is needed. And to do that, I'm going to produce, if I meet that criteria, that is, I'm going to produce 4 cubes. I can be really ambitious and say I'm going to produce 2 more, or have 2 more workers than I need, where I get 4 cubes. But I'm not going to be that brave. But, you know, if I really felt a bit cautious, I could say I'm going to get 1 fewer and say that I'm not going to draw any yellow workers from the bag and only produce 2 cubes. And you've got all these different spots so you can put new buildings in, and those buildings have different kind of production values. As you can see, you can do 1 more or 2 more here, or have kind of all different setups. You've also got these common buildings here, such as this spot, which lets you build another building. You've got this one here where you can spend 4 coins to upgrade one of your player boards here, which I'll explain what they do a bit later. You've got this one here that lets you keep a card from your hand, kind of reshuffle the rest into the deck, and then draw 3 additional cards. So this one's a good way to get more cards into your hand. This one here lets you trading 2 cards to get more resources. So you can get 4 coal, and then you can put any resource on another building that you've built. And this one here lets you spend 7 to unlock your 3rd worker, or 13 to unlock your 4th worker, which also gets you an additional 3 points. So as you can see, the worker placement slots are pretty straightforward and pretty simple to understand what they do. So once you've committed to what these different workers do, so let's see, for example, I did that. They are then going to go to the bag here, and you're going to draw out 4 of these different workers blindly. So let's do this one hand. Oh. That was quite strange luck there. So I've got 4 additional yellow workers. So what this essentially means is that from this event, or this round, I'm going to have basically 5 yellow workers in the picture, 2 reds, 2 greens, and a blue. And as you can see, that more than adequately reaches the criteria here. And I could have actually gone for the extra criteria and gotten myself an additional cube. So then they're going to get resolved in order, these discs that is, and I'm going to place the resources onto that card. So I would place 3 of these cubes onto the card, which means I now have this many coal to spend. And then I'd go to my second one here, which would let me build a building. And to do that, I would be able to spend the money I have available here, or available from my resources, bearing in mind these are worth 1 each at the moment, to build a new building. And these do lots of cool things, you know, such as being able to produce bread, or being able to produce meat and so on, which are worth different values. So every cube on these cards are going to be worth 5 each or 4 each. You can also do these here, which will basically give you more military strength, which is, if you remember, is important for the mission, because I need 2 military strength to win it. You've got these ones here as well, which the post offices, they basically give you a permanent passive worker to be used. And on top of all that, when you build a building by paying the fee, you are going to actually use the main board here to deploy one of your houses. So you're going to start here in this city, and if you go to an adjacent city, like this for example, you can choose to take one of the adjacent tiles here. These tiles let you do lots of cool things, such as, you know, when you build a building, you can build one for 4 money fewer. You know, you can trade in 2 cards to get a point for every yellow worker in the pool, and so on. But you can additionally, if you don't want to go to the next town, you can go to an additional town, a further town, 1 step away, I should say, but you don't get one of these tiles. But the reason you might want to do that is because, as you see from some of these cards, like this one, if you build on a certain building, a certain spot, for example, this one here with the tower, so if I built here, for example, I would get an additional discount of 3 coins. And some of the buildings also give you additional bonuses or instant bonuses. So you've got to bear that in mind as well. Something I should have done during setup as well is that everyone gets a mission card, a secret mission card, which gets you points depending on if you deploy in certain spots on the board, with certain flags on or these symbols on and so on. So there are some more points you can go for there. So let's talk about what these different buildings do. So this one's here basically means that when you build a building, as I said, you can normally only ever take the token if you build one away from you rather than the two. But this one increases that range. So if you produce two, if you move 2 steps away from you, you can still take the token, but you can potentially move another one and not get the token. So that one just increases your range and flexibility to travel around the map. And this one here, normally you would have to spend 3 cards in order to substitute for one of these workers you're missing. But if you get that upgrade, then you only have to pay 2. And I said you would remove these tokens if you do choose to invest in those. So that's going to be basically how the game's going to work. You're going to be trying to work towards these objectives. In this case, trying to produce as many food as you can in order to meet that 30 threshold, and also to get that many points by doing, by building buildings, by getting your secret objective missions, and by producing points. Because some of these tokens and things let you get points, for example. Trading in, let's see what we've got here. Trading in 2 of these yarns in order to get a point for each red worker you've got out there, and so on. So yeah, you're trying to get points in all different ways and trying to ultimately fulfill that objective. The multiplayer game works a bit differently in terms of the military strength, because whoever's got the most is going to get some additional points, and so on. And then from then on, when you complete the mission or you don't complete the mission, you are going to go on to the next story, which will progress. So yeah, it's pretty simple mechanically. The hand management is quite tight because you often have to spend cards in order to do other things. So you do want to have a constant influx of cards going through your system, and not only for that reason to give you flexibility on what you want to build, but also because when you choose to produce these buildings, you can choose to cash in cards for the matching symbol. So say, for example, if I had that symbol there, like this card shows, for each one you get rid of when you produce, you can add another cube to that supply. So again, you want to be constantly getting as much resources as you can, but bearing in mind which cards you're going to have to get rid of in order to do that. So there is that decision there, and I do like that multiple use cards method, which Alexander Pfister is very famous for. As I mentioned time and time again, this is a very introductory version of the game. Loads more buildings will be coming into the fold, which do lots of different cool things. The event cards add a lot of flavour to the game. As I said, there's lots of different boards here which are much more interesting. These boards are double-sided, but I won't show you what the other side does because, again, it adds another cool wrinkle to the game. There are character cards that you can add in which give you powers. Lots of different things you can do, and so this is a very stripped back version of the game which will hopefully give you an impression about the core fundamentals of the game. So let's talk about what I think about it. So first of all, as I touched on, I do like the card management system. Yes, there are ways that you can completely flood your hand of cards, by using these abilities, for example. But if you don't play these cards sensibly, then you will quickly find yourself running out, especially if you keep burning them off in order to, in order to get the extra resources. So balancing the resources you have available to you and the cards in your hand is important. You want to decide on what you want to invest in because you want to get these upgrades in order to make things more efficient. And additionally, you want to upgrade or invest in getting more workers so you can do more per turn. I really like this mechanism here where you can basically gamble about how much you're going to produce. You can be really optimistic and go for those higher values. But if you don't reach that threshold, then you are actually going to leave with nothing. So having cards in your hand to compensate for those missing workers is going to be important. But you can mitigate that luck a bit more by making these post offices and giving yourself permanent workers to play with. So I do like that. It has a cool idea of a small push your luck mechanism in a more involved game, which is quite interesting. I like the different abilities you can get as well from travelling around this map here, and there are quite a few variabilities here as well because there aren't. All these tokens aren't used per game. There's a big bag of these tiles like that, for example, and so each game is going to look different from time to time. Some of them are more available than others, because if you basically filling this board up one spot at a time, and if you ever draw a duplicate tile out, then that actually has an additional spot on which can potentially benefit you more than once, whereas if it's just the ones drawn, you can only use it once. So bear that in mind as well. So yeah, there are some interesting decisions here. The objectives are varied. There's a nice narrative thread throughout, which, you know, it's not the most amazing story in the world, but however it does add that extra flavour that might keep you coming back to it. You know, 8 very distinct scenarios, adding different things in, and which can really keep that hook and keep you coming back to it. So, you know, 8 games is quite a lot for, or at least for me. I don't tend to play many games 8 times. So the idea of giving you that extra incentive to come back to it and see where the story progresses is nice, which I think Alexander Pfister does well. The balance of the game is decent. I mean, I said I like the weighing up of the buildings. You know, the more powerful buildings they are, the more powerful abilities they're going to give you, more points they're going to give you, etc. So yeah, there's some nice balance there. And the events deck, because the events decks are tailor-made to the current scenario, they do a great job of adding, again, more flavour to the scenario and giving you that extra boost or extra setback that makes the game more interesting from game to game. The time investment is good, especially at a solo mode. I highly recommend this as a solo game, actually, because you can actually get every game done in about half an hour, whereas in a multiplayer game it leans more towards that 75 to 90 minute mark. You know, probably more around that 90 minute mark for the 3 or 4 player game, which, you know, it's not the most involved game to take that timestamp, which is why I like the solo mode, because it is so quick. Again, with Uptime as well, the analysis paralysis is, when I first read the rules for this, I was quite thinking that this game is going to be pretty straightforward, especially, you know, deploying the workers. It's not going to be that important, the order in which you do things, but the order in which you do things is actually extremely important, because you might need the prior abilities, because they're resolved in order, to fulfill the later ones. You know, for example, I might have my building action becoming after my resource gaining action, which I might rely on getting my resources in order to build the building in the first place. So the order in which you do things is quite important, which can add that extra wrinkle of meaningful decisions, but also potentially add a bit more analysis paralysis into the game as well. So you know, bear that in mind. But it's simple mechanically, but certainly not brainless, because, you know, the order in which you do things are important, and also what you're going for in the first place is important. Replayability, as I mentioned, it's story driven, so it gives that reason for you to, even if you just want to play through the scenario once, that's still 8 games you're going to get. And I don't think many games nowadays hold up to that many players, and this one does that. You know, you've got different boards to play through, loads of different buildings to add into the shuffle. You know, dual player boards here. You've got lots of different levels of story and different twists on the core mechanisms that just keep you hooked, really. So I do like the extra efforts that have been made in order to make you go back to this game. Aesthetically, I like the nice bright colours, the bright board. I think it looks very nice. It's all pretty basic stuff, but it works well, and it's certainly not overdone. It's not pretentious in any way, and I just think it's well produced. If you're familiar with Pfister games, then, you know, the card kind of anatomy here is going to be familiar, which is nice. You know, it's all very simple to digest and understand. You know, how many points you get, how much it costs, the additional resource that you can cash in order to get the extra bonuses, and the actual bonus it gives you. So I do like the anatomy of the cards. The component quality is good as well. You know, not only looks, but all the components are good quality. The progression is decent, because you want to spread out and get all your secret objectives. You're producing more and more buildings, which means you're producing more goods. You're unlocking more workers. You've also got the additional bonus of, you know, always drawing more cards and making another building. As you build up your engine, you get more black cards, and black cards trigger at the end of each round, which is good, and they can do lots of cool things as well. So there is a good sense of progression, and the game does have a ramping up effect, which is nice. Scalability, as I mentioned, I would highly recommend this at a solo mode. I think I prefer it much more solo than I do in a multiplayer game, because there isn't that much interaction. The only interaction really is trying to grab these different tiles. And obviously, as some buildings become available in a public forum, which can be snapped up by other players, even if you wanted them. So there's a little bit of tension there, but not much, to be honest. And comparison-wise, I've heard multiple times this one being very similar to the actual card game Oh My Goods, but I can't personally compare them. So I can't really think of any direct comparisons other than that, really. But overall, yeah, I enjoyed this game. It certainly has that Pfister flavour to it. It's got some very simple mechanisms, a nice simple flow from from phase 1 to phase 6. Very simple, broken down rounds in the game. The hand management is good. It's enjoyable. The resource management is good as you want to produce things in order to meet these objectives. Always bearing in mind the military strength as well and trying to get your points. I particularly like that pushy element of actual manufacturing the goods in the first place. So, do you want to take that extra? Do you really believe that you're going to draw the workers that you need to get those extra resources, which can give you that extra kick, but potentially leave you getting nothing or having to at least discard cards in order to get that extra resource? So yeah, overall, I liked it. I like this game. I think it's pleasant. It's fun. It's snappy. And it's got some good hand management in it. Loads of variability in the buildings, loads of extra wrinkles in terms of the where the story goes and the events decks and things. Certainly not one of my favourite Pfister games. It doesn't have that huge level of scope that his bigger games do, but nonetheless, it's still a very tight design. It's fun. It's it's not brainless. I like the way you have to plan your workers in order, so they are resolved in order, and you can't just choose which ones you want to resolve first, and that can play quite a big part in your decision making and so on. So again, a pleasant game, one that I enjoyed. I don't think it's going to stay around long term because it just didn't quite have that hook to really stand amongst the best of the best, but nonetheless, Pfister games are always solid, and this is another example of that. Again, 8 chapters, all different. Lots of different wrinkles to the game, which is a good thing. So that concludes my thoughts on Expedition to Newdale. If it does appeal to you, go check it out because it's certainly a solid game. If you have enjoyed the video, please hit like and subscribe to my channel and check out my other videos too. For everyone else, I'll see you next time on Chairman of the Board. Bye.